Maschine Masters? My name is MGTheFuture, and today I have another exclusive tutorial for you guys today. The theme of this particular video is going to be how to make a Partynextdoor type of beat. The song that I'm referencing in particular is going to be Come and See Me, which is produced by Noah 40. And this particular song is interesting because I was listening to it a lot when I fall asleep. And what I mean is I watch Revolt TV before I fall asleep. And I guess earlier this year, it used to play a lot at nighttime. And you know, it kind of just gets into your subconscious or what have you. But it didn't really, you know, it was just a track. It was like, all right, Drake's on it. He's swooning like Sade. But you know, it didn't impact me hard. It was just smooth and easy, and I fell asleep all the time listening to it. But then fast forward a couple of months, I was going to the mall, and either I was walking by a clothing store, demo or something, or actually it was a makeup joint. It was a place where they do the makeup in the mall. And the sister in there, she had it blasting like the same song, but it sounded different because for whatever reason, this makeup store had a sub. And I heard the kick, I heard the hat smacking me in the face, the snare was hitting me in the chest. And I walked into that makeup store and just sit there looking mad suspect, just listening to it. I was like, what the hell is going on? Because the track came alive in that environment with those acoustics. So with that being said, that kind of left an impression on me and I went forward. Then of course recently his new album came out, Chris Brown new album came out. A lot of R&B is coming out, and of course that's usually appropriate for the winter time. So when I went into the next part of this, which is my drum kit that's coming Friday, is going to be called Trap&NextDOOR. So it's kind of influenced by that moment, creating that moment. And then all the other R&B albums and all the influences I gathered from what I've been listening to recently, I kind of assembled together and put into this kit. So in this particular video, I want to break down the Come and See Me track drums, how to do the sound design aspect, if that's not counterintuitive enough. And then I want to show you how to use some of the loops that are in my pack or any other packs that are going to be in the Maschine Masters shop this Friday, so you can kind of have context on how you could flip them and use them. That was a topic I kind of touched on in my last video. But with the conflict of interest at hand, Noah 40, if he produced this particular track by himself, then he's using Pro Tools. He's a big Pro Tools guy. Sound selection wise, he's mentioned using Expand. I imagine these days he can afford to upgrade unless that's just his comfort zone. But if you listen to old tracks like Marvin's Room, the joint he did for Lil Wayne that was supposed to be for Drake, I forgot the name of it already. But a lot of the minimal stuff that sounds like he's using like regular 808s or 909s, those textures are coming from an instrument that was exclusive to Pro Tools called Boom. So it's very Prince-like when Prince was using the Linn drum, Noah's using Boom, and he's customizing and crafting these samples. Now, Boom is an individual VST you can buy now, which is pretty dope. I believe it's by Air Instruments. But if you don't have that or don't want it, whatever the case is, there's plenty of other options. And since we're on Maschine Masters, I found it appropriate to kind of show you how to do sound design for this particular track in Maschine, and then bounce that and process it and go forward. Like I said, there's a lot of conflicts of interest in this, but here's the thing. A lot of people are trying to push the culture forward, especially with the newer generation, and want people to be original and not make tight beats and things like that. That I completely understand. However, those same people who make that argument don't do anything in terms of pushing the culture forward or pushing the needle in terms of knowledge and information. So although it might seem kind of backwards of me to show you how to do your own thing, and then on the other hand, show you an example of my kit and my loops so that you can do my thing too, or, you know, all these other influences that we all have. It's the knowledge in doing these kind of videos that kind of give you a framework for making something new. Because for me and my attitude about all of this and all that I've ever done is that I learn it, I'm curious about it, I figure it out, and I move on. I don't need to stay in the realm of this video for my own productions. And hopefully if you do choose to support and buy the sample pack Friday, you'll listen to it, you'll utilize some of the single shots, because this is the first time I'm putting drums together in the joint, and then that can kind of just push you into your own style of Trap&B. At least that's my intention. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. Without taking up any more time, let's get to it. I went ahead and got a loop from the Partynextdoor track itself, got it into Edison, chopped it up into a very simple loop. Now, for the purposes of YouTube and all the things that come with it, I went ahead and pitched this particular sample, but I want you to get just a preview of what the texture of the sounds are. That particular loop range, drum-wise, repeats throughout the song. So when I heard it, I was like, this sounds pretty simple. However, I don't necessarily have those textures. The kick, we could kind of finagle. The hi-hats, they're in a strange pitch. And also when he's programming them, it sounds like there's a slight delay or type of back and forth thing going on here. And I'll show you that in a minute. And then the snare is a rim shot, but I don't have that pitch. So knowing he uses boom, I had to think to myself, well, maybe I should try, because this seems simple and I didn't want to overthink it, maybe I should just decide to just design these from scratch. I don't have boom right now. I have Pro Tools, but it's not installed because I switched to Logic. But I do have Maschine. So let me show you what I did in Maschine. Maschine, I don't use as much as I used to, especially with like Ableton and FL Studio, but I still have it installed. And with it being installed, I get to use the drum synth. So here are the textures I picked out. And this is just coming from the actual drum synth itself. To do drum synth, we're gonna go to empty channel, under sound, hit plus. We're gonna go to internal, drum synth, and you pick the type of sound you want. Your bread and butter is covered here. I'll give you a brief demo of what I'm talking about. So on kick, we're gonna go to the mixer so we can see it. So sub is like the 808, Tronic is like Lindrum 909, Dusty gets us into the boom bap, Grit is the same, Raspers are in between the boom bap and funk, up until we get into snappy and bold and maple, and it kind of goes from like electronic up to rock and roll. So it's almost like, it's almost like the synthesizer order is hip hop to rock, and in between is EDM. And then depending on which unit you have different parameters, which is really dope. So like punch and things like that. And you can kind of just fiddle and adjust. Things that have like room on it, that's more rock, acoustic based. Everything else is really simple. And this is a perfect starting point for you. For me, what I had to do on mine is just find the tuning of everything, right? So I know that particular track is around the key of A minor. In fact, a lot of Noah's tracks are around A minor, very similar to Alicia Keys. But anyway, I created a simple sub, a simple rim shot from Circuit. Circuit hi-hat is the only synth I know that can give you a really legit rim shot sound. And what's dope about it, I'm using seed G, but there's like seeds A through Z, and each one gives you a different type of texture for that hi-hat, or in my case, percussive rim shots and things like that. So it's really dope. And of course you can tune it on the fly. Hi-hat, I'm using hybrid and an EQ, adjusting the decay, and there's a lot you can do. In fact, the hi-hat for me was the hardest to design, because a lot of these parameters, they change the sound, but since a hi-hat is so fast, I don't hear it fully, you know what I mean? I have to slow it down and do a lot of other hacking. So what I did was I picked a hi-hat in the ballpark. But with time and experience, you'll get a lot better at that, at being able to understand what the synth does and really make any hi-hat you want, because similar to the kick, you have hybrid, memory, circuit, silver, etc. So there's 4 different versions with different parameters. I sampled into Sample Track to kind of give me dirt. And what I mean is these sounds coming out of Maschine are pure. And I'm assuming a lot of people don't use drum synth because it sounds kind of boring, but that's the intention. You just want a pure, unadulterated 32-bit sample. And then from there, you can dirty it, EQ it, compress it, distort it, distress it, whatever your go-to workflow is going to be. For me, that means sampling it into some lo-fi machines. So I'm going to play that real quick just so you can hear that loop from the sample track directly. So it made my hi-hat darker, my rim shot darker, and the kick is kind of more boomy. but that's in standard mode. If I put it in lo-fi mode, the hi-hat would have sound like a vinyl hi-hat, and I didn't want that. In FL Studio, here's the loop from the machine. I recorded it from the sample track through Edison back in the FL Studio. So that kick is the texture or tone, but it's not in the ballpark. So when you get it into Edison, what I like to do personally, and this is completely up to you, you can just slice these up. So I'm gonna give you an example of what I mean so you can see the workflow for that as an FL Studio user. And of course, if you have any other program, it's similar workflow. You just gotta find out what it's called in your program. So I'm gonna right click on my recording, go to edit, that'll bring up Edison. So like that snare or the rim shot, I just highlight it, snap to zero crossings just a little bit. A lot of these bumps in the line are just from the sample track, the resonance. I'm going to edit, I'm going to trim it, and there's this little icon here for gating the left and right. I'm going to click that, and it gives me my sample. Once I have that individual single shot, I then drag it into my FL Studio project. And then from there, that's when we begin the so-called sound design process. You add it to your mixer channel, you add EQ, compression, distortion, whatever your taste is. My recommendation is to mess with time stretch. Because if you didn't like that pitch or couldn't find it in the drum synth, you could tweak it a little bit more and get all kind of weird and crazy things going on. So that's more like a knuck if you buck type joint. And that's all just from one sound, just depending on where you are in the parameter. So this is my drum pattern, loosely based on his, because I couldn't figure those hi-hats out. The hi-hats are strange because he's using more than one, but it doesn't sound like it. So it sounds like his main triplet hi-hat has a delay on it. But what it really is that he has another hi-hat panned doing a steady rhythm, but I can't hear it exactly because the triplets are in the way. So here's my kick with my modifications. Here's my rim shot with an envelope on it. And then here goes the triplets, in case you want to see those, how I tried to do it. And then these are just regular hi-hats that are turned down really low and kind of just, under the track. And here's the mix for it. Now for the additional processing, I kept it simple. I'm using a SSL emulated compressor. The kick is a lot stronger than I want it to be, which is fine. But I'm using the SSL white channel from T-Rex on everything, really. It's like the hip hop R&B console, and it just put me in that mind state. It's not it's not an exactly a one-to-one of a real SSL, but it gives you the feel, the parameters, and it limits you to that workflow. So it kind of brings something different out of you. Now, when you do your own sound design or just mixing for that matter, you can use any plugin. I had a talk with my uncle, who's a Grammy award-winning mix engineer, and I was trying to ask him very specific questions like not how to compress, but how to do certain tricks in compression. And this man told me, you need to listen to all of them and keep tweaking. Like, that's their answer. Their answer is listen to all of it. Try all the compressors, keep tweaking, and eventually the characteristics will jump out at you over time. And I told my uncle, bro, I ain't got that kind of time. So I'm gonna ask somebody else. But I understood what he meant. Yeah. Real simple. Now, some cool plugins came out for free. I think your boys at Soundtoys gave us a reverb. So I'm going to use that to kind of bring that snare to life. And right now I'm going to insert tracks of Fruity Loops. If you don't have these inserts, they're usually hidden. So if you click this line right here, they're gone. You click it again, they're back. And as part of a template as well, there's a template for empty with 4 inserts or whatever. That's the one I'm using. It's called a plate. What I call it is the Travis Scott reverb. Now I have plates in the lexicon and stuff, but this one's a little different. It has a different vibe to it. So I'm gonna turn this rim shot send to the reverb just so you guys can hear how crazy this plate is. I like the decay on it. It's just a little too loud. So I back up off my send a little bit. Better. And that'll blend that reverb if you map it or bus it with the instrument reverb or kind of like share it. It'll kind of blend and be together. The hi-hats, I really want to put a reverb on, but sometimes that doesn't sound good, especially these little hi-hats in the background. So it gives a little bit more. It sounds like the delay that I hear in that original track. So that's pretty much it as far as pointers, sound design, and how to get started. Hopefully you find that beneficial and kind of inspire you to do more as far as, manipulating and molding some sounds of your own. So for this part of the video, I'm just going to give you a preview of the TRAPNEXTDOOR kit that I put together. This particular kit started as Trap&B's Volume 3. So if you checked out Trap&B's Volume 1 and Volume 2, it's just chords and stems, kind of like trap melodies, but with like an Asiatic feel to it. This particular kit, I started with the drums first because I wanted drums to accompany those kind of melodies. So as I was designing everything, I kind of like thought about my influences and everything I kind of described earlier. And I was like, it'd be dope if I could just do some R&B stuff. So that's when it went from Trap&B's to what it is now. And what's cool with the name TRAPNEXTDOOR, it's similar and largely in part influenced by Partynextdoor, but his name backwards is Trap, right? So why Trap or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I ran with that. This particular kit has a few sounds in each category, which is kind of like all around for you. The claps and everything. I even got effects. I made an OVO owl riser. Just a lot of cool stuff, things you expect to hear, a lot of textures that I mapped and kind of matched with stuff that you would use in a lo-fi beat or a Trap&B type joint. Now with the loops, I ran these through sample track so you can have the textures. You could chop them up as single shots if you want to. But the most important part are the loops that I end up putting together that was inspired by everything. So these are the loops. I have their key and their BPM so you can time stretch them. I dragged 3 of them in here so that I could time stretch them to the project tempo. Now I set them up so that they're set to stretch in FL Studio. So that means they're going to be sped up, which is fine, but they're not going to change the key. As far as the key goes, I mapped this particular kick in this tutorial after A. If you ever wanted to double check that with your 808s or your sub kicks, like the sine heavy kicks, you just right click it on here, go to edit, click on claw machine, and at the bottom it'll say auto detect. So it has us at A, and it's kind of 3 cents off, but I don't need to make any adjustments to that. I think I'll be fine. So all the samples that have an A in it, I went ahead and drug into this project. I won't play each one at a time to give you an idea of what they sound like. These are sped up, but I want to see if any goes good with this particular loop. Let's try this one. Cool, and then the last one in A. So I'm gonna try the first one first. I'm gonna see if I can get it a little slower because that would be pretty important. Let me see if I could time stretch it. What does that sound like when we do that? Especially when you're using loops, you want to change them up. Pretty cool. Let me go a step further. Let's see what this sounds like a whole octave down. Cool. So I'm gonna put that back to normal. I'm gonna duplicate it real quick. I'm gonna take both of these and route them to the same mixer track, I think. Or am I? For the sake of demonstration, I will. And then the second one, I'll put that down 12. And then what I could do arrangement wise is just alternate between the regular pitch and the lower pitch. And since each of them have two parts, that should be fairly simple to do to kind of create enough variation you're going to need for a track like this. Change my snap real quick to bar so everything's cut evenly. So that's my high, this is my low. So once you have a groove you like and things are starting to move nicely, what I'll probably do is split up my drum track real quick. I'm gonna do split by channel on that pattern so I can have individual layers that I can move around about. Basically bring like the kicks and the hi-hats and everything to their own joint. So let's check it out. This is the kick track. Switch to the paintbrush tool real quick just so it's a little bit more efficient. Cool, so let's see how this sounds when it goes into it. Then I'll figure that out. I'll fix that out at the end. Probably something more like this. I might just use the second part. Cool. And then add more drums to it, add more bass, more chords, anything you want to do. It's just to kind of keep it in that vibe and that atmosphere because of what the time stretch is doing, what the pitch, what the filter's doing. And of course, I haven't mixed anything yet, so there's a lot further that I could take it. But for the sake of time and just example purposes, that's the kind of workflow I envision going into creating this kit. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that on Friday. Hopefully you found the drum synth tutorial pretty useful for your own productions. I want to thank you guys for checking this out. You can reach out to me on social media. I'm at MGTheFuture. Be sure to also follow at Maschine Masters. If you like the video, like it. If you're not a subscriber, definitely subscribe. Appreciate you. Until next time, peace.